Hello everyone and welcome to episode 34 of UK League Chat. This time we're joined by Dusty support Fittle. Fittle, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, thanks.
Good stuff, good to hear. Um, let's just crack right on then. For those that have been watching recently, we've I think we've mentioned it on the podcast. We're trying to get through at least one episode per team. This split, obviously the splits for the NLC technically finished now. But it gives us a chance to get on some guests from the teams that we didn't quite manage to just yet. Obviously, Fittle yourself being one for Dusty. So let's start with that, just with the Dusty roster, even sort of before, um, before talking about how the split actually went. How was it that you came about joining Dusty, or was there any kind of other offers you had, or just in general, sort of where were you hoping to be this off season?
Um, I was actually trying for a Spanish team that I hoped I could go to, but I think the split with Dusty was really successful. Like Dusty was one of my top choices as well, regardless,
Mhm.
um, and ended up there. We actually wanted a different roster in the beginning, um, and it actually went all the way that we sent out contracts to the two other players that was signed, so they just had to sign it and send it back. And then in that half day, they both just disappeared. And then there was like I think we had like 3 days, 5 days, something. Yes, like really a little time we had to find new players. Um, so a lot of the choices we had like second choices, etc., was
Yeah.
already off the table because I already signed. Luckily, we found Jack and Quinn, who both are really good players, I think.
Mhm.
So it turned out a bit different than what we wanted, but I still think it was pretty good.
So how was it from like a player's point of view this off season? This off season, because we've had like coaches and managers tell us that it was just complete hell for them, basically. Especially like for those that are like I think sort of the lesser budget teams where they can't offer as much as the other ones. They
Mm,
were just kind of waiting until everyone else was confirmed to see who they were going to get.
yeah.
So what was it like from a player standpoint? Was it as a player was it an extra hectic one as well, or is it just always a bit manic?
I think in general, being free agent as a player is always is super scary and is super stressful. It's you have to imagine it's basically like between 2 weeks to 4 weeks where you just have scheduled tryouts from 15 to 18 and then 18 to 22 every single day. And when you think about it, you have to think about it as a kind of an exam you're going to. Like if you're doing a bad tryout, you failed the exam. So it's super stressful because maybe the team you want to play, you want to play for, you get one chance, and then you don't perform well. But every
Hmm.
other tryout you want to perform pretty well. So it's like you have to be consistent for so long, where you can't make one single fumble, and then
Yeah.
it all just falls through. So I think it's really stressful, especially when you get to the point where you want to lock with a team, because you have an organization you want to play for, and then you have a certain lineup you want to play for or play
Hmm.
with. Um, so that's why I think the best thing you can do as organization is if you have locked the staff first. So you have the manager, analyst, coaches, because then normally they would drag the players to them. Because if it's not like that, then it's kind of like you're playing chicken. So you ask each other like, okay, you want to play for this roster? Like, how high is it on your priority list, etc. And then like it's number two. So if the other thing doesn't work, then I don't want to play there. And you're sitting there, okay, so if you don't want to play there, then I don't really want to play there. And then you have to all these different variables.
Yeah, you have
So
to like become the GM
yeah,
yourself.
it's really stressful. I have to admit it.
So when you're doing like tryouts, then what are you trying to focus on more? Because I've kind of heard, um, I've heard managers and stuff say that like they're not even always. Obviously, they want you to play well, but like sort of even just the way you're communicating and stuff, and how you go off of if there's mistakes and things, they the kind of personality behind it, they sometimes could see as equally important. So is there anything you yourself sort of try and focus on, or um, yeah, just anything in particular?
I mean, I just try to be myself basically, because from every tryout you kind of get some feedback as well, how they would have wanted it, like in terms of shot calling, for example. I'm a pretty vocal person, and then some people says that they want some like direct shot calling. Other people say they want like suggestive, more laid back, where it's more 5 people having a conversation about what you're gonna do about the game. So you get a lot of different inputs. So for me at least, I just try to be myself and then just play the best that I can. And then try to have a lot of input between the games when you're doing web reviews, etc. Because even though it's tryout, I really care about the games myself. So when there's a bad play or something, and it might have been my call, then I really want to go in and then discuss if it actually was a bad call or if it's just bad execution. So you can still learn from it, because you spend a lot of time doing these tryouts. So if you can do replays and if you can assess the games, then you're kind of standing still in the duration you're doing tryouts.
Yeah. One thing is, I think you mentioned about sort of knowing what coach might be there as well. So was Veigar V2? Was he? Was he not there before? Because I know he was like, he coached Dusty like in a different tournament, I think, before, a different split before. So was that something that happened, like his return, was that after the roster was locked then, or?
I think he was, in the beginning when he coached him, he was not on contract. It was more like a verbal agreement. And then I think after the thing with Fnatic, he had a lot of different offers from top, or not, maybe not top ERLs, but a lot of ERL teams. And I think there even was a LEC offer, maybe. So he had to think about that first and see if some of it was possible or not. And then in the end, I think it was actually after everyone signed, they signed Veigar. So
what was he like then as a coach? Because he's sort of like a bit of like an enigma, kind of like, it was like, he's obviously like, he's like pretty popular on Twitter and stuff. He's got like quite a decent following, and I think very outspoken as well. Like I remember a couple of times, you probably wouldn't have seen it because you were in the matches, but there was matches of Dusty's where he would be like in the Twitch chat arguing about
it was
his
great.
own draft.
It was brilliant. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I think you guys did him in because you lost the game, and then the guy that was arguing with him was like loving it. He was like, "See, I told you your draft was shit." And like, so what was he like then? Yeah, what is it like working under him?
like in the team in general, or just him as a person?
Both.
I think. Oh, I mean, I think him as a coach, I think he's probably the smartest coach I've ever had. I think I've never learned as much in a split as I have with him. But the approach he has as a coach is more like a secondary coach or analyst, I would say, because he looks a lot on your individual mistakes and the macro decisions you make as a team, and then he points it out and shows it to you, so you can learn from these mistakes, and he explains what you should do instead. But he kind of misses the overall structure that would normally be for a head coach, I would assume. At least from what I've heard, then people have to do that. Because in the beginning, we learned a lot, but then the fewer mistakes we made during the split, the less we learn. So it's like the learning curve went really far up and then like slowly went out, right? Because then it became more of a team thing, and we probably focused too much on too much stuff. So I think he's probably missing that. But besides that, he's excellent coach, and I don't think we've been able to do anything without him, actually. Like,
I think it does highlight kind of something that you're saying, which is happening now with the ecosystem as a general, where like Veigar's a very good analyst. Like that's Veigar, whatever you want to say. It's a very good analyst. Like, and that kind of like, and it shows in the teams which he's been at. But then we're getting to this point in this ecosystem where just because you're an amazing analyst doesn't mean that you're an amazing head coach. You could be a good head coach, a great assistant coach, and a superb analyst. And I think that's because of the way that the level of how backroom staffs are right now. And you've probably seen it yourself, Fittle, as you've gone through team by team. that there's kind of like a bit more of like a level in terms of like the backroom staff and how there's more specific roles. It's not just kind of one person who's good at everything now. You kind of get these people who are specifically good at certain jobs to the point of like performances. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with it. So there's a lot of different aspects of the game. Like you have the physical aspect as well. You have the micro. You have the macro. You have the structure is way more important than people actually think. And like during a split, there's a lot of issues that comes up with the players, what you got internally, or between each other. And I think that's something as well that needs to be handled, where normally a manager, for example, there's always a meme where the manager finds a scrim and then he's like, my job here is done. He's running out. But in my opinion, a manager should be like way more. He should be the one who he structures everything regarding travels, boot camps, the scrims, and then on top of that, make sure that the environment and the team is really good. Like, it's not just sitting passively. He should be there, practice as well to kind of feel the dynamic, etc. To get the best results.
And I think there's a misconception that kind of like, even though in ERL sometimes it is a bit of like friends will be together for quite a bit of it, and there is a bit of like, oh, I'll be there if this player's there. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be times where those players don't disagree with kind of how the game's being played or how things are being run. And so it's good to kind of have that person to say, look, like, shut up and do it this way, my way, or put your shoulder around them and say, it's okay, we'll try both. Yeah, there's different tactics around it, but it is a common like misconception that kind of like with Godsent, for example, they were a group of friends, but I doubt that they didn't go an entire split without having one fight or arguing about something, because it's just that's what happens in a competitive environment.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing about being friends is probably that you know each other's trigger points, I guess I would say. So you know how you should talk to people, because normally if you don't know each other that well, then you have your individual way of talking to people. And I think a lot of players don't really take that into account. Like maybe a really great example would be Forgiven, where he's just saying it brutally straight on, Yeah. For some people that's what works, but when you think about communication, you always have to think about how is it received. It's not what you say, but does he actually receive it? Because you can have a player that you're trying to coach as well, and then if you just tell him straight off you're really bad, then some people would take that and learn from it, because that's what they need. They need someone to be firm with them, but other people kind of need to be like underlying. And I think that's what you get as friends. Like you can see Riddle as well. They know each other very well. So yeah, I think there's a benefit to being friends at least. Yeah.
I think it helps as well the fact that like people also forget that there's different nationality kind of cultures and different way that that people treat each other just through that. Like and it probably helps Riddle a lot that the fact that they're all Danish and they've all kind of been brought up on a certain culture. Now I know in the Nordics see, this is the worst thing. So from a UK perspective, I look at the Nordics and I think that every single Nordic region is the same, but they probably also have like different kind of ways of saying things or different kind of a way of acting around people as well. Because I know that a lot of British people are very sarcastic, and I know like my girlfriend is Portuguese, and sarcasm just goes all over. She goes over her head. She just doesn't understand it, and so there's always kind of language barriers, I think, in terms of not just speaking English, but in terms of actually the culture of where people are from.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think I see it like mostly with like when you hear about like European players going to NA. Like I think it was Miffy said it when he came back, that when he'd gone to like TSM, that he just didn't fit in. Like I think he said like he couldn't just go for a beer with someone and stuff like that. Like it's just, yeah, I suppose like cultural differences probably not as huge in like ERLs, but then yeah, it could be just differences country to country as well.
He did say the solo queue was nicer though in NA, like because in EU it is something else.
True.
People are pretty toxic here.
Moving on then from the actual roster building. So once the team was put together and all the rosters were kind of announced, where did you guys see yourselves in that group B then? What were the kind of aims for the group stage?
I mean, I think the goal was always to be top 2. We actually thought that Excel would be on top, and then sorry, not Excel. Fnatic would be number 1, and then we thought Munster would be number 2, and then we thought it was like between us and Tricked about being the middle. And then I can't remember. We thought M&M. Yeah, we thought M&M would crash and burn, basically, because they had Monk.
They did for half of it. You're not wrong. They did for half of it.
The thing with Monk mid lane was a big thing for us, so we had to arrange the teams as well. And then we thought Barrage would be kind of bottom tier as well, but they turned out to be pretty decent, I would say, but kind of one-dimensional in their playstyle.
Yeah. So then going into sort of when we went into the split, then I know you guys over the first few weeks there was I think it was at the point after week 4 you guys were 1-4, and I'm pretty sure I remember that was when you had like a boot camp, right? And then suddenly they had like a perfect week. So what were the kind of things you were working on then? So when you were at that 1-4 stage, and then obviously had the a bit of a turnaround, was there certain stuff that was identified then that you worked on to start winning matches at that point, or was there anything in particular?
I mean, in general, the bootcamp was just about team building, people getting closer together, getting to learn each other, get to know each other. But I think the biggest issue for us the entire split, and was until the end, was communication. So Veigar actually had us do scrims with no comms. So we went into the game and everyone just muted on Discord. And I remember we scrimmed against Riddle, and we lost like 4 games in a row against them, where we got shit stumped. And then we had the last game, and then Veigar was like, "Guys, let's try no comms this game." And then we just hard smashed them. And then everyone after the game just takes their headset off and was like, "This was so calm, guys. Why are we not doing this more often? Should we do it in an official match?" Imagine how fun it would be to come on an interview afterwards and it's like, what is the comms during this Baron fight? It's like, there's no comms.
It was like the referee in the Discord or something. It's like, thinks everything's broken.
Yeah. But I think like everyone are kind of, what do we call it? Beta in a way. So you would have your own plan. Like you would, for example, do cheat recall after you push the 3rd wave, because that would be really good for you. But then if someone said, can I invade the blue buff, or can I do scuttle, or like these small things where they're asking, then you start to think, okay, should I do this? And then you cancel recall, and then all of a sudden it's not good anymore. So the communication part actually had a big deal with how we played the games, because people wanted to help each other, probably too much.
So I'm gonna say this now because I know that people will probably bring it up who watch. I've not been the biggest fan of Dusty the entire split, if I'm being honest. And the problem which I felt sometimes was the fact that like it felt in games that you lacked kind of an identity sometimes. Well, like with other sides, I could kind of see like a clear kind of game plan of what was happening. Now you can disagree with this. I really want to see your take on this, and you can disagree with this, obviously. But I thought I'd mention it anyway because I want to hear what your take is. Is that because that I did just feel like going into a game that there kind of wasn't an ever a Dusty style until I would say like the last 2 weeks. Kind of after that boot camp. Would you kind of agree with that, or would you say it was something different?
I think we tried a lot of styles for sure. We often lacked like easy ways to engage, easy to execute comps. But I never thought the draft was issues, because I think Veigar's draft was always inferior. They were really, really good, and they should be better in every way. What's the question again?
So what I'm saying is that
identity, right?
Yeah, there was. I felt like sometimes there kind of wasn't an identity point to the point. Obviously, so I'm gonna flame Eminem a little bit. Like Eminem felt like they had an identity despite it being very, very bad. At points, especially right at the beginning. Where sometimes I did feel like I went into a Dusty game and I was like, right, I don't know what I'm kind of gonna see from this side because even 3 weeks in, I haven't seen something which kind of has identified me as kind of what Dusty is.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that way we didn't have identity, honestly. We tried a lot of different stuff, where it's like playing for top lane, playing for mid, jungle, bot lane. But I mean, every time it kind of varies from game to game what champions you have and also what teams you're playing against. Because I remember we had against Fnatic in the first round. From the games we watched, and we all agreed that they were kind of late game teams, so they just wanted to scale. So the way we wanted to attack them was to pick an early game comp, and then if we could get through the early game, if we could snowball early game, then we would most likely win the game, right? But then we had some bad fights and we made some bad mistakes. And then different teams went for hardcore scaling. For example, Munster, because we saw Munster as a really strong early game team. Not strong early game team, but they played for early game in general. So if we had even lanes, like decent lanes, and we would outscale them at 20 minutes, then we would just win the game by default, is what we thought. For example, you could see in the first game we had, we went scaling into them, got shit stomped because of some minor mistakes. And then in the last game we had against them, we also went scaling, where we honestly should have won the game, but we didn't win. We didn't want to win it, sadly.
What did you make of Munster's split then? Because they were obviously the ones that came out with like this like mad roster, throwing money everywhere, and then it obviously hasn't quite worked out. Like they did get onto playoffs, like sort of joint second in terms of score at least, but then dumped out pretty early, and I'm sure they'd probably agree is probably a failure of a split from that sense as well. What do you think were some of their issues that they couldn't quite reach those kind of heights they were expected?
I'm not too sure because I think they had good players all over the board. So maybe it could be personalities that didn't mix well together. Like if you have a team full of strong personalities, and they normally don't mesh that well together. It's like every time you see super teams being made, then there's like 5 good players, but the roster just fails, right? And I think that's if they don't match well together. So when people build teams, then they also look at the personalities to make it match together. So I think that's kind of what happened, like that good players, so they would start to split really high, as you saw in the first round. I think they won almost every game, besides the Fnatic game. Or did they lose to Tricked in first round?
I think they lost to Tricked as well. I think it was Tricked and Fnatic they lost to.
But they should have won against Tricked, if I remember correctly. Like they did one minor mistake again with early game comp. But I think that's kind of what you could see, that they started high, and then every other team would just slowly exceed them if they got the proper coaching to keep the team going. Like same with our team, I thought they would start kind of low, but by the end of the split, I would have seen ourselves as top contender.
I think with Munster as well, I look at kind of the players themselves, and it reminds me. Well, it doesn't remind me specifically of a point, but in terms of like, I think that if you put all of those players in a different ERL side, like individually, I think they're actually really good players and would actually do well for a side. But when you put them all together, it didn't seem to work. And now this is an obscure. Well, it's not really that obscure of a football one, but England had a problem in midfield with Lampard and Gerrard together. Lampard and Gerrard were two of the best midfielders in England, but you put them together and they just didn't work well because I think styles clashed. And it seemed very similar with Munster, where you've kind of got these star players who you look at all of them and you think these are top quality players who've either had a very high ceiling or potentially could have a high ceiling. and it didn't really work from a stylistic point of view.
I think another thing might have been ego. But I'm mainly thinking about Hiva and Maxlaw. Of course, I don't know this, but if they come from really good teams, like Maxlaw came straight from LEC, right? And then he has to play ERL, and he's playing with a lot of quote unquote lesser players than he just came from, and perhaps like the coaching staff have been better as well. Then he might have just thought that they were too good for the team, and then that could probably cause some issues in team dynamic, I would think.
We've had Frumi in the chat. I think he's taken offence to what you said about Barrage, that you didn't expect them to perform. Okay. So
it's not me for a change. Oh, okay, we're good.
What were your thoughts on Barrage then? So they were the ones, obviously, in the end, it was pretty much a tiebreaker, that last match that you guys had, where obviously it wasn't really a tiebreaker, but whoever won was going to get in playoffs. So yeah, what did you make of their roster? What did you think it was that got them over the edge? And why did you perhaps not expect that much from them in the beginning?
I think Barrage was kind of you watched the movie Moneyball.
Yes.
A Moneyball or something. I think it's called. Yeah, I think that might have been Barrage. Like a lot of players that they're not like they haven't had any really good what do you call it? Results. Yeah, they didn't have any really good results individually, and then they just performed really well on the teams they played on, and then like they just put them together, and I guess they worked pretty well as a team. Like I know for a fact that the structure with Barrage is really good. I played for them a few months, so I know that for a fact was good. So maybe that had a thing to do with it. But I think Barrage overall, they were underrated, but at the same time, I think their playstyle was really one-dimensional in the terms that their bot lane, they didn't really want to play lane. They just wanted to scale. Same for the mid laner. He didn't want to play lane. He just wanted to scale. I'm not too sure about the top laner. And then you had Flipper. I would assume he's kind of the talk guy. He would just call whatever he needed. So again, it's basically just a scaling team. So
it looked like you were right. Frumi says he said I legit watched that film before every off season. So now we know his trick.
And let's be honest, when we had Surza on and we mentioned where he expected to be, he was ecstatic to be in playoffs. Like absolutely ecstatic. He was like, yes, this is exactly like where we definitely were happy to be with.
Who?
So
Surza.
Andy won. They won in playoffs as well after that. So it was we got him on a good day, didn't we? Let's be honest.
Where OG is jungler?
No, Surza, the Barrage coach.
I don't remember his name.
One thing I wanted to ask actually, just when we were on the topic of the boot camp, so do you think like some of the teams that I don't think there's that many in the NLC, but the teams that like live together, I'm pretty sure Excel, the players all live like in one place. Do you think they have like an advantage from that then, even just from the few days you guys spent together?
Yeah, I think they have an advantage for sure, because like you're bonding a lot more, and it's a lot easier to take up issues. Like when it's just voice, you don't really know how people react to stuff, etc. But when you're actually in person and you're talking about stuff, you can see how they react. You can feel it. So I think the communication part after games is a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to do exercises, like trust exercises, for example. Stuff like this. I think it's a lot easier. It's for sure a way bigger investment to have people live there, but I think if you're looking to get results, I think it pays off pretty well.
So there's no one that you thought that if you actually living with them 24/7, you'd end up just ripping their head off, and it would be the opposite.
Nah, I
Thinking
don't.
about it though.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so
that's good.
actually. I didn't have anyone who was kind of messy. I think Jack got a bit tired of me during the camp. he shared a room with me, and I'm pretty hyper when I go to stuff like this. So I'm always joking around and perhaps a little bit too troll sometimes. So, yeah.
Have you been in have you played for a team with a gaming house before? Or?
Yeah, I played for a team called Alternate Attacks. If you guys know it, it's pretty old. For Landlord, maybe it says something. Okay.
Not for me.
But yeah, I played with them where we lived in Germany in something called Linden. It was me, Yenax, Frenik from SK Academy, and Scarface. And I think we had Raya once, and then we had MTS later on. We lived in a gaming house there, and I mean, we had decent results, but there was some issues, and the structure was not too well. Like the manager didn't live in the house, for example. He wasn't able to come there every day. So I, for example, had to be the mom or the dad of the house. So I had to say like, clean your dishes.
See,
clean
that's
your
what
room,
I'm sure
you know.
I'd find like the worst thing. I don't know if it's maybe because obviously like, you know, like pro gamers and that when they're coming up will be probably like younger. I'm like pushing mid-20s now, so maybe it's because of the age. But I couldn't imagine like just people not cleaning up and having like just dirty plates and that all over the place. I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't tolerate it.
I think it made for great TV though. Like, I can just thinking now like a caster house. You just get all the casters, from like LEC and just see what happens. And I know some of them live together all together, but I wonder if there'd be a clash and just film it all. Extra content. Content is gold, correct? Yeah.
Esports Big Brother.
I mean, I had an episode with Yenax where we had an agreement that every time the dishwasher was full, then you would empty it and then you put your dirty dishes in. If it was full and it was dirty, you would start it, right? And then I remember I'm coming out to the kitchen right after Yenax, and then he's opening it, and then he sees, this is clean. He closes it. He puts his dirty dish on the table, and then I'm walking behind him like, why not emptying and putting it in? He's like, I can't do that right now. Like, what are you doing?
It's even worse.
I have to play solo queue. It's like, are you in queue? No, I have to go queue up now. Like, what? what are you
Literally,
doing?
with a dishwasher, there's just no excuse there as well. That's even worse.
Yes. I mean, it's a fun moment when you look back at it, but I have to say I got a bit annoyed at the time.
Nice. So yeah, moving on from that then. So just this last weekend, because we'll cover it a bit because we haven't talked about it on an episode just yet. But was the end of the split? Was the last couple of days of the playoffs? Did you watch much of it? Because I saw a bit of the stream you were on earlier with Isbriz. And I think you mentioned that you kind of had it maybe in the background or something. So did you watch the final couple of days too much, or is that something maybe we'll skim over a bit?
I mean, I just had it in the background, I think. I just watched results, basically.
Okay.
See how they were doing in the game, who won, who lost.
No,
I didn't really look too much into it.
Yeah.
Honestly, when you said looking at the results, because there's been so many games over like the past like a couple of days, I was like, what is he talking about? Like play-ins? And I'm like, oh yeah, literally like 3 days ago there was the finals. There's just been so much League of Legends, especially if for like an NLC fan. Like it's been day after day. I looked at today and we were worried because I tweeted, I DM'd Lee, and I was like, can we make sure that this comes on just after the Riddle game, because I don't want to miss any of that. And he's like, that's tomorrow. I'm like, no, it's not, because it just felt like it was always going to be a Riddle game the next day.
Yeah. I hope NLC they fix the schedule, because it has been. I don't think it's okay for sure. Like,
what do you think of just the fact of like that, the semi-final being the same day as the final? Like Riddle played 7 games in a row and could have played an 8th if they won that. And I think it's like, fair enough. Like they took a game off Fnatic, which I think a lot of people didn't expect anyway. But especially after the fact that, yeah, they just had a best of 3, and even just the fact of like not even just tiredness. You know, Fnatic have like all day just to sit there and watch how they're playing and take it all in. Whereas Riddle, they've then got no time to really prepare. I know they gave them like an hour in between, but it's hardly anything. So yeah, what do you make of that? Like, do you think that gave Fnatic an even extra advantage at all, or?
I mean, for sure, because you're watching, or at least you can watch like 9 games of Riddle games, and then you can analyze that, see what they're doing. You can see what styles they're playing, what champs they're playing, how they prioritize stuff. So you get a scouting advantage for sure. And then on top of that, imagine you're having a really, really close 3v3. Like you're having 3 really, really close games, and then all of a sudden you have to play a best of 5 right after. Just imagine how tired you'll be in your head. And then on top of that, the day before they played exhausting series as well. Like,
I think in the semi-finals and the finals, I think it was like they played the entire regular split in 2 days, because they played 3 games. And then they played 7 games, didn't they? So yeah. That's 10 games. That's their entire split in 2 days.
That's true.
Which is crazy.
Ridiculous.
But I think they've just been like, I think NLC, or at least I hope NLC, have just been what do you call it, pressured with the time, because they had to make the league and they have to start it up and all this, so it got kind of pushed too much. So everything came insanely close to Masters. Like the day after they played the finals, they had to play play-ins, right? So was it 2 days after?
No, literally the day after. Yeah.
Literally the day after, yeah.
So I hope they get it fixed for next time and stretches it out like way more.
I suppose it could be worse. Like the LFL one is like, I'm pretty sure even way more of a mess. Like, I think Tom, you mentioned something about them a couple of times.
I was going to bring this up.
Yeah, I didn't realize how bad it was, and I was looking at it like just on Leaguepedia the other day. I was like, wait, so the split's not finished.
Yeah.
They've just had they just did like a gauntlet kind of thing. And
so I was corrected after the stream, because I thought that the LFL had just finished and they just played each other once. But it's even worse, to the point where they kind of played a gauntlet to see who gets into EU Masters. And then after EU Masters, they're then going to play the split. And that's just insane, really, because so they've done it this kind of tournament kind of thing to get who's qualified, and then basically their actual season's going to start after EU Masters for the prize money. Actually, it is crazy.
I was actually looking at that. Like, I was searching the leagues to see who qualified for play-ins, and then I was looking at LFL, and then I was like, this can't be right. Why is it so far behind? Like, it doesn't make sense. I can't see who's qualified. They didn't even finish the split. It makes no sense.
So they did. I think it was like the top 5 teams at that point did like a mini tournament, and just a complete mess. And then to top it off, the seeding's just been absolutely rubbish as well. So we've got.
Let's just not talk about. Well, I mean, we'll have to talk about the seeding, but.
Well, yeah. So we've got obviously for the NLC side, it's not great. So we got Riddle. Because they lost that tiebreak. Well, even if they won the tiebreaker, it was not the best matchup for them anyway. So you've got like NLC, LVP, Prime League, and
French
LFL. And LFL in 2 of the play-in knockouts, and then like all of the other like lower seeds in another one. Like, who is doing this? Like, first off, is the 2 seeds that NLC gets in the first place. Like, someone's really got it in for us. I swear.
Yeah, that's true.
It's shocking. One thing I was like, that it's not a silver lining, because it doesn't come from their decision. But I think one thing that was at least good that to do with our E-Master stuff, kind of for me, is the way that it sounds harsh, but the fact that Excel didn't get in, because the thing that worried me was that you've got the NLC where we've got this new league, 12 teams. Obviously, the player pool is really strong, because we've obviously got like Denmark, for example, is obviously probably the most strong out of all those countries. But then my worry was, well, if there's only 2 seeds for EU Masters and it's just Excel Fnatic, then those other players, there's no point for them to come back to the NLC anyway. They may as well just still go to teams in other
It was
leagues.
just a downgraded UK scene. If you look at it from the outside, while obviously It's obviously a lot stronger with the NLC. But if you look at it purely from an EU Masters thing, you've just seen then two of the sides which qualified last split, but one of them's just got a playing spot. So it's kind of like, well,
Yeah. So that I saw that as like, if it goes like that, then it's not really going to help talent to come to the NLC anyway, because they won't see that they've got much chance to get into EU Masters. So I think it's at least good the fact that Riddle got there, and we can see that non-academy team can get in, and that might help at least. Do you see the EU Masters seeding staying like that, or would you expect it to change? Because I can't imagine they'll keep just like that one group and one player, and I think that's just terrible.
I mean, I really hope that the amateur scene, like EU Masters, etc., that it gets fixed. That there's actually some structure in it, because I think it's not fair that you have the strongest regions and they have to play against each other. Like, for example, Riddle have to play against the what is it?
LDLC.
They have to play against the winners of last EU Masters to get into EU Masters even. And they come
and then
from,
even from the other group, you've then got Gamer Legion, obviously the German side facing the Spanish side, to then get through. So for them, it's unfair on which one of them. If you look at kind of strength of region, I think the crazy thing with the seeding. So there's been a lot of slating about the scheduling, especially with like no English broadcast, and I wasn't on like I would have preferred it, but I didn't really care. I just watched the German broadcast. That was fine by me. But for me, what I had the issue was is that scheduling has nothing to do with how you'd seeded the teams into groups. Like that, a lot of other things, like with the NLC, with anything, I could blame kind of coronavirus and say, oh, well, there was a lot of coronavirus issues, which led to scheduling. But for seeding, there is no excuse. And for me, you should never have two third seeds in the same group, in G2 Arctic and in LDLC. Like, it should have.
Was everything just randomized?
Yes, it was. So they haven't actually come out, but I looked at it because obviously G2 Arctic had 3 seeds. The Spanish scene had 3 seeds, and the French seed had 3 seeds. So the only logical way that they've done this is they just randomized it, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Pretty awful. So other than EU Masters, then, so obviously we'll kind of see how that goes tomorrow. We'll see if Riddle do make it through. Fingers crossed. But then, looking onwards from that, then, what are your kind of next plans then, Fittle? Because this is obviously like the longer off season where we've got nothing for a few months. What are your kind of short and then sort of longer term plans? You got any plans for the off season, and then after that, where do you see yourself in terms of any sort of league you're looking to play in or anything like that?
I mean, there's the I think German league and what is it, Italian league? Like all the ESL leagues, previous ESL leagues, they have ESL tournaments during the off season here. Like last off season, I played in Italy for Samsung Morning Stars, for example. We played Euro Cup and ESL tournament, and then something Red Bull factions, I think. So I will look for something like this in the off season, but besides that, I'll just have focus on streaming and then try to reach my goals so I can have the best possible start to the next season. Like in terms of solo queue, if I can get to like 1 KLP or even higher, then you'd have better chances to show yourself. Hopefully.
So for like spring next year, then would you see yourself sort of looking to move at that point, or have you kind of enjoyed being in the NLC? Obviously, it's the first split, so do you think it's gone well? Is it something you've returned to?
I would 100% return to NLC. I think it just depends on the team, the players, and what kind of offer it is. Like, I'm not even sure if I get any offers because of poor results, right? So that's why solo queue has a really big factor, because maybe I'm a little bit known in Nordics, but if I wanted to play in Spain, France, Germany, whatever, then I'm not really a name there. And the only way you can make a name in any other ERL is that you get high on solo queue ladder. Or you have friends there, of course. But so yeah, I would see myself returning to NLC again, depending on the teams that would try out.
Nice.
Now, obviously, this is a bit of a bloated question, but it is interesting to see from a player's perspective what they think. Do you think that kind of it'll stay at the level which it's at now, or do you think that next split, like some sides, for example, like Munster, are going to be a little bit more pragmatic and you're a little bit safer with kind of who they're going with? Then on the other side, you could actually have someone like, Barrage, Ents, Godsent, for example, who did Godsent especially, I would say, played it safe. Do you think that they could maybe be like, right, okay, let's invest? How do you think kind of the scene's going to be coming into Spling?
I think, depending on the contracts the organization put out now, I think if people sign people for like 2 splits or something a year, then you will see the same terms. You see the same in terms of investment from the organizations. But I think the viewership was way lower than people expected. I talked to Tricked's owner, for example, and I think the first week of NLC, it was showed on the front page of Twitch, and it had like between 4 to 6K viewers.
I think the highest was like 8K viewers. I think it was on the first day. Yeah. It really, really like did well. There were a lot of kind of what I called like the CS:GO orgs, essentially, which really kind of gained a lot of popularity in that stream, probably because of the of it being on the front page of Twitch, because people recognize those brands. But yeah, after that, I agree. It didn't perform that well, unfortunately.
It went to like 1K, but yeah. I asked at the point where it was 8K, I asked the CEO, and I was kind of excited because I thought it was a lot of viewers, and he just told me straight up that it was less than he expected. Like, it was not enough.
Wow.
So he was expecting the same as Prime League or LFL, I think. But there's a long way to go, and I think that's also, we've done a lot of interviews with the NLC staff, and it looks like they're kind of appealing to people who doesn't play League. Like, they want to get new people into the scene and have them come watch the game instead of finding people who already play.
I think I looked at it because esports charts, like, shout out to them. I think it's a great website, just because I love viewership numbers and stuff like that. I believe that it was either equal or less than what the UKLC was in spring. And obviously the UKLC, I think, had less hours, I think, in total, because there was less teams. But I don't think that's what they were expecting when they came in. I do think that there was teething issues, if we're being honest, but I hope it's just not something which we see traditionally in the UK scene, where it's like, oh, it's not working, let's just revamp it all, And because I feel like, despite me being in the UK scene for not that long, I think there's been like 4 different formats, which is incredibly silly, because you just don't see it like anywhere else, really.
I mean, I hope they delete the groups and you get to play against every team.
Well, I think I'm gonna say this every single one until someone from NLC listens. Yeah, all you do to fix that is you basically play the groups as it is, and then you play one of play the other side once. I think that's the best way of fixing it, because you at least then get to play everybody else, and you're not oversaturating, I think, the amount of games you're playing.
And I think on the viewership as well, like I saw Crane had a tweet that was a few people were replying to, and it's something I think we talked about as well. It's just like the length of the breaks between games is just like enormous as well. And I was always thinking, like, when I was watching, it felt like it was ages, but I never really checked it. And then there was one, I don't know, it was a match like towards the end where I couldn't watch it live, so I went back on the VOD. I think it was in playoffs, so it was when it was a best of 3, so I was just skipping to the next match, and it was literally 25 minutes between games, and it's just like, for a viewer, and it's not even like it's 25 minutes of content. It's like 5 minute break of adverts, and then music, and then 5 minutes of talking, 5 minute break again. And it's just like too much. I was wondering because I kind of tried to give the benefit of the doubt, and I presumed it's maybe to do with it being like a totally online broadcast, and they're not in a studio where it might be easier. But Fittle, I was just wondering, because I don't know, do they give you any sort of warning of when your game is coming up? Do they give any reason why to you guys why sometimes it's so long? Or I just wonder if you had any idea.
They don't give a reason, but in the beginning you had a timesheet, and it was basically one match starts at 18, and then the next is 19, and then 20, and people complained that there was long breaks, and then what they changed was they wrote the actual time that you're gonna play. So instead of like first match is 18, and then next match is, I think it was 19:35 or something. They would say that's when it's supposed to start. That was the only thing they changed, but like we actually had a really good laugh about it, because I remember there was Prime League going on at the same time as NLC, and then we watched one game of NLC, and I think during that one game, like from when it was supposed to start and until the next match started, like the beginning, the whole match, and then what is it called, like
the pre-match, post-match kind of
the
stuff.
pre-match, post-match. In that duration, they played 2 Prime League games. I think that's pretty true.
And I think what they're saying,
if you're the last teams, you play at like 23 or something. You're so tired at that point.
I think we haven't done it that often, but we did a podcast straight after, I think it was the NLC, and it was late for us, and then we realized that the person was an hour ahead of us, and we were like, wow, that is insane.
I think it was
late.
it was Ericsson, and he told us, he's like, oh, it should be fine, like it's kind of in his sleep schedule anyway. And then by the time like we finished the episode, he was like, yeah, I'm knackered, like because it would have been like 1:30 in the morning or something. But yeah, it's true, because it's even a weird time, like because it's 6 o'clock for you guys, isn't it, that it starts, and then it's 5 o'clock. No, it's
6
the other
here.
way. It's
7.
Yeah, 7 o'clock for you guys, 6 o'clock for us, and that just seems like a weirdly late start anyway. Like, no, I don't think any other leagues start that late usually. Like like the LEC, for example, that is the one that should be accessible for for the biggest audience, starts at 6 o'clock European time, or CEST, whatever the time is, and 5 o'clock here, and that seems to be all right. I wonder if it may be because it is half of the audience, well, not maybe half, but because it's meant to appeal more to a UK audience as well, that 5 o'clock they might see as a bit too early because people will just be finishing work, or I don't know. But yeah, it just seemed weirdly late to start, and then with all the breaks and that, like you say, like by the time the last game comes around, you're like ready for bed, or I am at least. Jesus.
I think with the breaks, the excuse, and I do call it a little bit of an excuse, is that there's sponsorship, obviously, and there's a lot of sponsorship, which is probably the main source of funding which the NLC gets. But then I'm kind of like, well, you could just have lower third in analysis. Like for me, if I'm a sponsor, and obviously there's a lot more into it, but I would rather, I think, my brand be prominent during an analysis than during a break, because you get them more eyes on that product. And also I do think that, and I kind of hoped that, I wonder if the NLC kind of hoped for a little bit more content in terms of not maybe casters, but in terms of video content. And because of situations that there wasn't that, because they did have some good video packages. I think one was Taiki and one was Trouble Inc. And they were kind of good packages, but they just didn't seem to make enough of it. Were kind of, and I'm being honest, there were times where I was watching it, and because the break was so long, I just watched something else, and then next thing you know, I'm like 15 minutes into the other game because I was just too busy watching something else at that point. I do think it needs to get sorted. It wasn't the smoothest. I do think that if they can get things like that sorted, it hopefully can help it grow, because if you are trying to attract like a viewer who's never watched League of Legends, or someone who's, this is their first kind of experience seeing it, you don't want them to click on it. They're going to click on it for like 3 seconds, 5 seconds at most. And if it's on a break, which for them probably, if you actually like looked at probably what the majority of the broadcast is, probably a lot of it was, they're just going to click off. And so it's pointless. You've not gripped them at all.
If you think, if it's 25 minutes between each game and a match is usually like, I don't know, 30, 35 minutes, like if someone to click on it and just see for the first time, they've probably got like a 40% chance of not seeing gameplay when they click on, which is like, it just seems way too much. And one other...
They did put, if we have to give them a little bit of credit, like, they did put highlights, I think, in like the last 3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
They did start putting highlights in, but again, you're not like, I guess if you know what's happening, again, if your audience is someone who's new, they're not going to know what's happening. You kind of need like casters to talk about it and to explain it and stuff like that. So even just the League of Legends tutorial videos, which I think they had on like the BBC, just put one of them on. Like, I know it sounds really silly, but just kind of, put something like that on and then put highlights on. I think something which just breaks up kind of, here's highlights and here's, if you go, especially on Twitch, I think there was at one point where I think it was like 10 adverts in a row on Twitch. I was like, oh my, I've never seen so many adverts.
Outrageous. There's actually, now while we're like on the topic of just complaining about the broadcast, there's just one other gripe that I have, and I've not mentioned it, and I don't know if maybe I'm the only one that gets bothered by it, but when the gold graph comes on, I always feel like the wrong team is on the top and the wrong team is on the bottom. So they do it like whichever team is on the left-hand side is on the bottom of the graph, and I've never like thought about it, so I don't know. I've never like made a conscious effort to double check it when I'm watching another broadcast, but I'm sure it must be different just on the NLC, because I've never got confused by it before, and every time it comes up on the NLC, I get confused which way round the teams are, and I don't. Maybe it's just me, and I'm just stupid, but I've literally never had that problem before. And when I watch the NLC,
I think you're looking a bit too much into it. I don't know. I just look at it as, so the team on the top is red side, despite it being blue, I think. No, it's a blue side, red side. Yes, because so the graph colors are blue and red. So, you just kind of have to look at who's on blue side, and if it's gone up like that, then it's blue side. If it's gone down, it's red side. So
yeah.
I don't find it too.
I think
I'm just watching Manchester right now in like the normal league client, and blue side is top and red is bottom.
Yeah.
I think that's most logical as well.
Maybe I think I'm just stupid then. I don't know how. I've only ever found the problem on there. I don't know.
And I do appreciate the NLC, but I think the one gripe which I do have to say, and I do think they need to work on this, they didn't do a team of the split, and I'm so disappointed that you don't do a team of the split for your broadcast.
They also team of the split, is that from broadcast or players?
They never did a team of the split from a broad, like there was no graphic which kind of showed this is the team of the split.
Like that. Okay.
Well, yeah, or even because it would usually be like a vote with the players and stuff involved, isn't it? But yeah, I don't think they.
No, I was thinking about something different. Like, I think every other league they had MVPs, for example.
Yeah, that kind of thing. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Like, week MVP or like match MVP, stuff like this. Something I'm kind of missing, because I think that creates a lot of hype for the individual players as well.
Yeah.
Because like if someone gets like 6 MVPs in a row, then people will probably be like, wait, who is this guy?
Yeah, because we were. Was there a point, Fittle, where you were a bit like, are they doing a team of the split, but they've just not asked me? Like, are you going to see a graphic of players' team of the split, and you've not been the one who's got the DM to say anything? Because like I felt a little bit like that sometimes when we were doing ours.
LEC? Like LEC just.
Yeah.
All times pro team.
Well, LVP used to do it as well for the UKLC.
Oh.
Like they actually asked me, and this is why I like it, because they asked me if I wanted to put my submissions in, and they sorted out a team of the split. But we technically, the UK League podcast was the official NLC team of the split because they never did one.
Megalodontus is saying in the Twitch chat, he said there still might be, and he sent a wink face. He said there still might be a team of the split. So,
it's too late though. People don't see you Masters now. Nobody cares. I'm sorry. Like,
I mean, that's just what happens with a packed schedule, isn't it?
Yeah, true. Because
exactly.
to be fair, we did ours after the regular season, and I think that's when a lot of leagues usually do it. But then, also at the same time, maybe sometimes it doesn't make sense to do it then because playoffs could still have an impact as well. Someone could pop off in playoffs, and that could get you in.
Yeah, but that's why it's called regular season team of the split. That's why
we didn't call it that, Tom. We just call it.
Yeah. No.
Never mind. Megalodontus then. Drop him a message. Tell him to invite us. Then it sounds like you've got the message and we ain't. You don't actually have to do that. Don't worry.
No. Megalodontus, I had to give him a shout out. So while EU Masters has been going on, because Megalodontus knows an infinite amount about EU Masters in ERLs, he's been guiding me through matchups. So when I've been angry at certain things, he's been validating myself and saying, no, you have every right to be angry at this. And then there's sometimes which he says, so I was like, this group is really, really like difficult. And A and B is stacked in EU Masters. And I'm like, is it Megalodontus? And he's like, yes, no, it is. I'm like, okay, I've got the confirmation. This is a difficult group. So I'm like, our Sector 1 just really good. You know, and it's like, no, it's just the way the seedings work.
You're just like sending him your tweets before you make him just to double check. All right. Is there anything else you guys had in mind to have a chat about? Anything you guys wanted to cover? I think maybe we'll start coming to an end. I'll take that as a no.
No, I don't. I think that as much as we've slated on the NLC, the reason why we slate it is because we want it to do well. Like, yeah. I think it's overall, I think it's a positive thing for the scene. I think in terms of the bringing the pool together, I have to admit, I have my doubts of it, but actually combining them all, it does seem like a good idea. And the games, while they took a while to get going, are actually really, really good competitive games. And the league I think from both the Nordics and the UK scene is stronger because of that. So I do hope that they do get better because it is something which I genuinely can see being, you know, if production is right and obviously like all the casters I think have been absolutely brilliant as well. If we have to say so to that, I think they've been really good. But I just think that if they can get things kind of little bit of things together, it could contest kind of, I think, at least from a quality standpoint, like the German leagues and stuff like that, and rightfully be a third seeded EU Masters team because it's just one of those.
Yeah, I think what
I really like as well is they put, for example, for Scaran, Medic, like a lot of ADC personalities. They brought them in to do analyst.
Yeah.
So I guess they try to make some kind of pull for audience. I really like that. It's also when you're a player and you're not playing LEC, etc., then when you get people like this in and they cast the game or they analyze the game for you, you're actually excited about it. Like it's an experience.
That's when you're saying like, give me Thresh. I want to make all the highlights.
Exactly.
Well, it's like, and it helps a little bit as well because like obviously I've spoke to like a couple people from Riddle about this, but when Riddle got when Tricked got mentioned in the LEC broadcast, when Frost was like, Tricked is a really good solid because Medic was talking about Excel and Fnatic and Frost was like, no, Tricked is the underdog, and those players must have felt so good knowing
just
that
they mentioned Dusty as well, by the way.
Exactly, that's what I mean. So like those little things, I think by kind of saying, even being like, oh, do you just want to see what's happening and stuff like that? I think that did really help, and I don't know. The Medic one surprised me a little bit because they did it first, and then I think was it in playoffs where I believe they were just like, and here's our surprise guest, Medic casting. I'm like, wait, they didn't even announce this. Why are you not announcing this? I would have had like graphics all over saying medic doing the playoff commentary or stuff like that. But yeah, it's one of those. I guess they wanted a bit of a surprise, and it was quite good.
Yeah, I think the biggest success for me is just the level of the league. Like, yeah, you think of like when we think the academy killers now were like Riddle and Munster. And obviously Munster didn't end up, quite there. But if you just look at those lineups and compare it to the academy killers of last split, which were Envision, not trying to be harsh on the Envision players, but like, that those kind of lineups on paper it's night and day, really, isn't it? So, yeah, I think just the fact that it's probably largely from the player pool difference as well. I think it has meant it's a lot more competitive than probably either the UKLC or the Nordic League was before. Yeah, just hopefully the kind of just a few kinks in the broadcast, I think, is like the only thing at the moment, and hopefully we'll see the numbers start to go up. Yeah, I think with that, we're probably a good place to come to an end for this episode. So thanks for having us on, Fittle.
Sorry,
yeah.
Last thing, we do need to mention this. So the votes finished for. So we've been predicting the entire NLC in terms of giving our predictions, and despite me being heavily biased towards Ents, I think I had them winning like 8 out of 10 games when I looked at it back or something like that. The results came to the last day on the finals, and we all predicted different Fnatic victories. And then the guests ended up winning in the end. So I can't remember where I finished, but
you were second and I was third.
Actually,
okay.
what was your guys' favorite team from NLC? If you had to choose one.
Ooh, see, I've got a battalion top, so your Barrage have kind of bought me. But in terms of who I found entertaining, I loved kind of seeing Tricked, because Tricked were always the side which I looked at and was like, what's like? They were a side which I always felt like with the underdogs who were always performing at a point, because I think of how I really rate Pad as like a coach as well anyway, and I think his ability to kind of take these, I'm not saying average players, but take these players who not many people expected to do as well as they did and to get the most out of them. I really like seeing that from League of Legends. It's why from an LEC standpoint, why I really liked kind of Schalke's run. Not because of the miracle run, but because of seeing these players actually perform to a level which I never expected them to reach. Mm-hmm. It was also fun to see Munster, but probably for the wrong reasons, if I'm being honest.
Surely M&M then, Tom.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe M&M as well. Eli Wood was good, though, in the end. Honestly,
yeah, actually. That's
I think M&M would have been great if they had the roster which they had. Yeah. I think everybody kind of agrees with that anyway.
I think mine probably would have been Tricked. Like I'm just a sucker for teams that do like weird picks. So like as soon as I saw Azir top first game, like they won me over from that, I think. and the fact they won as well. Obviously, if they'd have just got absolutely trashed, then maybe not. But
what about Sencooks' Annie? Everybody loved that one, didn't they?
Well, yeah, they won that game, didn't they, as well? So
they did win that game, but I didn't like it.
Sebix played Annie as well, no?
Yes.
Oh no, that's it. No, that's who it was. Yeah, we're getting mixed up.
Yeah. Oh yes, it was Sebix. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the Annie player. Mm-hmm. Like normally in scrims, people pick Annie, and then you write to them like, "What is this placeholder for?" And then you just have Sebix who's just picking it regardless.
And I'll just say as well, Tom, back on the predictions, I can't be salty about finishing third. So it was like a win-win for me, because if I won the predictions, then I win the predictions, and that's great. But like coming third, I can now just say then, like, I've got you, Tom, as my co-host, and the guests that we've got on have out-predicted both of us. And like they say the thing about like, surround yourself with smarter people. Like you don't want to be the smartest in the room. There you go. My plan worked perfectly. So
right, but it doesn't help when we've literally had guests say at the end of like broadcast or tweeted saying, "Oh, I completely entered these predictions. Like, I've done this because it's just funny, to do it." And they've won, and I'm like, like great. But it was fun. We enjoyed doing it. It's probably the most consistent. It's the most consistent thing we did the entire split, I think, at this point.
And well, it's unlucky for you, Tom. You were right there, like last second last day in the lead. Never mind.
I mean,
All right then, let's call it there then. So thanks for coming on, Fittle. I just realised as well, when I started to do the outro before, I said thanks for having us, which was completely wrong. So
thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, you mentioned that you're streaming, or you're going to be streaming more in the off season. What's your Twitch? Where can people find you?
I think it's just called Fittle. It's like my Twitter.
I can see it is, yeah. So same as what you guys can see on the screen for his Twitter. Then yeah, go and follow that on Twitch as well. Also, anyone that is still around watching us live on Twitch at the moment, you can of course follow us here at 96 as well. Otherwise, if you're watching later on YouTube or Spotify, you can, or watching or listening on YouTube or Spotify, you can follow on those platforms too. And yeah, you can see all of our Twitters on the screen as well. So do feel free to drop us a follow.
Final thing.
Yep.
I've never done this before. I've never stopped you during an outro. Are we allowed to say who our next guest is for you Masters, or are we still a bit hush on that?
We'll tease it. We'll build anticipation. So after you said that, Tom, I'll say we won't say it just yet.
I think it's a big guess.
It is quite a big guess.
I would say. Yeah.
Not that you weren't big, Fittle. I don't want to be harsh. But there are. We'll say in terms of stats, they're our biggest. They've got the most followers of any guest we would have had. So that's unbiased. That's what is it? An objective. Yeah. I wish.
Which means that if it doesn't happen, we've now got to look at all the followers of every guest and try and get someone who's that little bit more.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, it should be all right. All right. I think that'll do then. So yeah, I'm not gonna do the outro again, but there we go. So thanks for listening, guys.